My wife, I have a remarkable marriage. I don't think it's unique, but it's close. I mean, we've been together 50 years. We've had one fight. I'm crazy about her. I mean, she's probably at home, like, tying sheets together, hoping to escape from the house. But
as far as I'm concerned, she's thrilled.
Yeah, exactly. I'm nuts about her. I mean, it has been a passionate love affair for 50 years, which is not the norm. I mean, it's not the normal thing. She has seen me go from a liberal Jew to being a conservative Christian, and somehow she has made all of that
roll
work.
With the punches.
Yes, yeah, and she's a wonderful. I mean, everybody loves her. She's like the nicest human being on earth. Like she made one mistake. That's the way it goes. But so yeah, she has been there through all the stupid decisions I've made. When I became lippy about my politics and my income went from high 6 and 7 figures to nothing in the course of months, she did sort of come in and say, we are going to have to sell the house. And I was like, really? She said, yeah, you blew up your career, and I was like, okay, and that's what we have to do. And she's been incredibly patient about it. I mean, any other 100 women would just rip my head off. But, my favorite story about my wife, computers had just become a thing. Home computers had just become a thing. And I'm writing with a pen and then typing my books on a typewriter, which takes months. So I'm writing and then the typing takes weeks and weeks and weeks. And I'm working to support us. I'm working as a news writer in a radio station. And the guy comes in and says, you can't work on a typewriter here. Everything is done on a computer. And I said, I don't know how to use a computer. So he said, well, I'll show you. It'll take me an hour, So he showed me how to use a computer. I left the radio station. I went to a computer store and spent literally every dime we had, which was $1,200, to buy a IBM ripoff. And I come home, and my wife comes home, and I'm ripping open the gigantic box. And she says, what have you done? And I said, I spent all our money, but don't worry. This thing is going to make it back for us. And she said, okay. People ask me why I love my wife. That's why I love my wife. And it did. I mean, it was a revolution. I mean, suddenly I could write books and they were just as good in half the time, a quarter of the time. And it revolutionized my career, but that's my wife. So
that's beautiful. My wife is very choleric, and we fight.
Yeah.
By fight, I don't mean necessarily that it gets nasty, but we come into conflict. But very similar story. I had a full-time job and I wanted to take this podcast full-time. But if I were to do that, we would be making $35,000 a year with our 4 children and no health insurance. And she went, let's do it. So
did she?
She's crazy.
Yeah. So
she's so beautiful.
You won the lottery of life. I mean,
well, what's nice is there might be more selfish times where I think to myself, does she see I'm really pulling my weight here? I'm bringing money in for the family. Does she appreciate this enough? But what I've realized is, she didn't care when we had no money.
Yeah.
She didn't disrespect me when we had no money, and she's not overly concerned that we have more money now.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
That is a beautiful thing. But do it. Not everybody has that.
I know. Sometimes I feel like marriage is we have this thing in Australia called the lucky drawer, where you have these wrapped up presents, you don't know what they are, and you give $1 and you just put your hand in and then you unwrap it, and then you know what you've got. Sometimes I'm afraid that marriage is a bit like that. You don't know what you got until 5 years in.
I know.
Is that too cynical to say? I mean,
I mean, I can't help but feel there's the hand of God in it. I don't think I was nuts when I was young. I mean, seriously nuts, so that I had to be saved from my insanity. And I picked her up hitchhiking,
Oh, wow.
And I wasn't driving a car. She was hitchhiking, and I thought, oh, my God, my car is parked up the street. There's this beautiful girl sitting with her thumb out.
So you saw her?
Yeah.
You went and got your car to pick her up?
She was like, fashion model, beautiful. And she's, I thought, there's a girl, a beautiful woman who wants to be picked up. Let me get my
I haven't encountered this before.
And
what happened? Tell me about it.
So I got in the car. It was parked up at a friend's house. This is in Berkeley. And it was a jalopy. It was a Dodge Dart. I think it was built in 1872, and it never started on the first try. It never did. And I turned the key and it just exploded into life. And I came out and I realized I'm on a one-way grid in a residential area. And I drove around at 50 miles an hour. And I still, to this day, every time I tell the story, I have this visceral image of this old lady who stepped out in front of the street, in front of my car, and I swerved around and I said, "Get to the."
So I ran over her and I went.
I ran over and I leaned out. And I said, going my way, my dear, casually. And she literally got in the car, and I thought, I'm done. That's it. She is the girl. She got in the car, and I think she said something like sharp short, which means nice car. And I thought, yeah, no, this is, and the fact that I was right, and when I was so crazy and so, I wasn't right about anything else, it just makes me feel there's some kind of, some people, and I don't know why I got that and other people didn't, probably because I needed it, and maybe other people don't know. I don't know.
I also think sometimes obviously this is cliche maybe, we have this romanticized view of marriage. We don't realize that marriage is meant to bring our imperfections to the surface so that we can deal with them.
Yes.
And so when this woman turns out not to be God who will fulfill all of my desires, I decide that, well, she wasn't the one. I got to go find another person who looks like God. And it doesn't work. So it's like, your only option is a sinner, a wretched woman.
Yes.
And the fact that she can put up with you, you should be thanking God.
I know, because if you leave her, you're going to marry the same girl over again.
Right.
Yeah, and have the same exact problem.
It's so boring,
and
isn't it?
then you realize it's you, which is really bad.
That's got to be. And then by that time, I've known people in my life. There's a fella I grew up with. This woman friend of mine. Her father abandoned the family, went to Bali. It was public knowledge that he was with prostitutes and things like this. He came back very obese. He had bleach blonde hair, though he was a dark Italian man, shell necklace, lived in governmental housing. And God bless him. I'd be worse if it weren't for the grace of God. And I mean that. However, I think of that and I think, it's just not worth it. Like, don't follow the shiny objects because they will lead you to be a fat man with a shell necklace and no respect. Just destroy your life. Gosh. Yeah. But at the time, you don't realize that when the sirens beckon.
Yeah, I could have made a million mistakes. I mean, there's so many mistakes I could have made, and I don't understand it. I mean, there's a lot of my life I don't understand that people who grew up in a very similar milieu to me went in very, very different ways, and why I came out of it, with God, which has been the joy of my life. It's just been the as you say, it's like this path to self-knowledge and growth. I'm 150 years old. I'm still growing in this, kind of amazing adolescent way, and it's just, and I don't know why that happened to me.
Hey, thank you so much for watching. Before you go, do us a favor, leave a comment, let us know what you thought of the video, like, and subscribe.